Hello students, today I am going to read a comic strip adapted from an extract of the famous novel Pride and Prejudice for you all. Ever since his arrival in the neighborhood, Mrs. Bennet fondly hoped that her eldest daughter Jane would attract the attention of the wealthy Mr. Bingley. So, you can see in the picture in sofa, Mrs. Bennet was sitting and she was having 5 daughters, and in their neighborhood, the rich Bingleys, they arrived and she was willing her eldest daughter Jane to get married to Mr. Bingley. Then a person came with an invitation letter, and Elizabeth was asking, "Well, Jane, who is it from? What is it about? What does he say? Make haste and tell us." And the letter was from Miss Caroline Bingley. She invited Jane to their place. And now, Mother, Mrs. Bennet, she was planning something. And Jane said, "Mother, may I have the carriage when I go?" And mother said, "No, my dear, you better go on horseback." What she was planning? It was about to rain that day, and she thought that it would help Jane to attract the attention of the rich bachelor Mr. Bingley if she stays there for few days. And that's why she said, "It seems likely to rain, and then you must stay all night." Elizabeth, she said, "that would be a good scheme if you are sure they won't send her home." But Jane, she was willing to go in a coach. "I would much rather go in the coach," said Jane. But mother said, "But my dear, your father cannot spare the horses." So, a little after Jane left home, it began to rain hard. The rain continued the whole evening without intermission, and Jane certainly could not come back. Her sisters were worried for her, but mother was delighted that her plan had worked so well. Now, the other day, Elizabeth received a letter from Jane, and the letter gives information that Jane was sick. So, father was worried. He said, "Well, my dear, if Jane falls dangerously ill or dies, it would be a comfort to know that it was all in pursuit of Mr. Bingley." So, he was just little angry with Mrs. Bennet. But Mrs. Bennet, she said, "Oh, people do not die of little trifling colds. She will be well taken care of there." So she was really very happy because her plan worked. Then Elizabeth, she was feeling anxious, was determined to go to her sister. The carriages was not available, and she was no horsewoman. Walking was her only alternative, and she was very confident. She took the decision and started for Netherfield. "I shall be fit to see Jane, which is all I want." And mother, she was irritated at this decision of Elizabeth. "How can you be so silly? You will not be fit to be seen when you get there," she said. And father, what father Mr. Bennet said, "Is this a hint to me, Lizzie, to send for the horses?" Lizzie means Elizabeth. Elizabeth then said, "No, I don't wish to avoid the walk. The distance is nothing when one has a motive. Only 3 miles. I shall be back by dinner." So she was very confident. She walked to Netherfield to meet there Jane. And she reached there. Oh my! This is the first word from Mr. Bingley's sister. Then Jane had slept badly and was too ill to leave her room. The doctor arrived and confirmed that Jane had caught a violent cold, and he advised Jane to stay in bed, advice that was followed by readily, for Jane's fever and had increased and her head ached acutely. When the clock struck 3, Elizabeth felt that she must go home because she was not invited. She only came to see her sister. So when the clock struck 3, Elizabeth felt that she must go home. "Please don't go." Jane was requesting her not to go. So What happened then? Miss Bingley was obliged to invite Elizabeth to remain at Netherfield for the present, and Elizabeth said to her sister, I am staying right here, Jane. A servant was duly sent to Longbourn to bring back a supply of clothes from Elizabeth's house. Now, here you can see the table scene. When Elizabeth went downstairs to dinner, she was quickly reminded why she disliked Mr. Bingley's sisters, because they were strongly cold and indifferent about Jane when she wasn't around. And when Elizabeth went back upstairs, this Bingley sisters, they started saying against her. She is very ill mannered, no conversation, no style, no taste, no beauty. They started saying against Elizabeth. She looked almost wild when she came this morning. Her hair was untidy. Why must she scamper about the country because her sister had a cold? I hope you saw her petticoat 6 inches deep in mud. So they were insulting Elizabeth at her back. Then Bingley said, what he said? I thought Miss Elizabeth Bennet looked remarkably well when she came into the room this morning. Her dirty petticoat quite escaped my notice. So they were just engaged in private gossip. Mr. Darcy, I am sure you would not wish to see your sister do the same. They were just saying to Darcy. Certainly not, Darcy answered. It shows an abominable sort of conceited independence and indifference to decorum. So Darcy also said against Elizabeth. He considered Elizabeth's behavior as indifference to decorum, as if she is not following the decorum. Then it shows an affection for her sister that is very pleasing. But Bingley was little bit praising her attitude and said her affection for her sister really praiseworthy. Darcy replied, not at all, they were brightened, oh no. Before that, Bingley's sister said, I am afraid, Mr. Darcy, that this adventure has rather affected your admiration of her fine eyes. Then Darcy said, not at all. They were brightened by the exercise. No, he just said his words. Then, I wish with all my heart that Jane Bennet were well settled about with such a father and mother and such low connection. Here, Bingley's sister, she was just saying that she was really expecting this Bennet sister to get married well, but she was having doubt as because of their low connections. That does not make them one jot less agreeable. So this is their private conversation. They were just discussing about the Bingley sisters. Darcy commented, but it very materially lessens their chance of marrying men of any consideration. Because of their low connection, according to Darcy, they won't be able to get married to good families. Then, yes, then Elizabeth joined the others in the drawing room after Jane was asleep. Miss Elizabeth is a great reader and has no pleasure in anything else. Miss Bingley or Bingley's sister, she was just trying to irritate Elizabeth by actually it's not the praise, real praise, it's the irony or making fun. Do you prefer reading cards? Reading to cards? Mr. Bingley asked Elizabeth. I deserve neither such praise nor such censure. I am not a great reader, and I have pleasure in many things. So Elizabeth, she was very right speaker. I am sure you have pleasure in nursing your sister, said Mr. Bingley. So it's little bit making fun of Elizabeth. Okay, you have a delightful library at Pemberley. Pemberley is the place from where Mr. Darcy came there. And don't you, Mr. Darcy? So this was asked by Miss Bingley. Then Mr. Darcy, he answered, it has been the work of many generations. This shows his pride for his family. and you have added so much to it yourself. You are always buying books. So this is the Miss Bingley. Miss Bingley, she was praising Darcy indirectly. Then she said, is is Miss Darcy much grown since the spring? I am sure she is now as tall as I am. So this is about Darcy's sister Georgiana. And such a delightful girl, such a countenance, such manners, and so extremely accomplished for her age. Just praising Darcy's sister. Then Bingley said, it is amazing how young ladies can have the patience to be so very accomplished. So they were busy in gossip, and their main purpose is to irritate Elizabeth. All young ladies accomplished. What do you mean? Darcy proved himself to be proud, and he said, do you mean that all young ladies accomplished? Not all, according to him. Then Mr. Bingley said, yes, they are. They all paint tables, cover screens, and knit purses. I do not know anyone who cannot do all these things. Means, according to them, young ladies, they are very accomplished. Then Miss Bingley said, a woman must have a thorough knowledge of music, singing, dancing, drawing, and modern languages, and besides all this, she must possess a certain something in her air and manner of walking, the tone of her voice, her address and expressions, or the world will be but half deserved. So they were actually saying what do they mean by a accomplished woman, okay? And all this she must possess, and to all this she must yet add something more substantial in the improvement of her mind by extensive reading. So Darcy added to all these qualities one more quality, and that is the quality of reading books. And according to them, those who have all these qualities, only they are accomplished. Now Elizabeth, what she said, I am no longer surprised at your knowing only 6 accomplished women. I rather wonder at your knowing any. Okay, this was her very witty remark. Are you so severe upon your own sex? Means she was saying that only, means you are against your category, you are saying against your category. She was just answering very wittily. She understood their purpose of saying all this about the accomplished woman. Then Elizabeth said, I never saw such a woman. I never saw such capacity and taste and application and elegance as you deserve united. So all these qualities you want in a lady, but I don't know any lady of having all these qualities together. This was very witty answer by Elizabeth. This much is given for you all in your book. Thank you, and I suggest you to read this to understand. Okay? Thank you, students.